all once. Steps. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and get started for today. We've got a smaller group. So today is meant to be review for the midterm exam. I've got just a smaller set of people, which is great. I just want to use some time today to go over some major things to know in preparation for the midterm exam. We'll be doing a bit of a game to help us to prepare and to help you feel good going into the exam. But I really want to make sure that this is a time in which you are able to ask questions and help to clarify anything that you need as you get ready. So I'm going to start by just going over a quick review, and then I will be sharing the study guide and opening things up for any questions or issues you'd like to go over. Then we'll be doing our game. So basically, as you're looking through your notes and thinking about how to study for the midterm exam, what I really recommend that you do is to split and think about your notes by weeks, right? So we've had 4 weeks in the term so far, and each of those weeks has been dedicated to covering a few ideas. So in particular, if you missed some classes during any of those weeks, or there are some notes that you'd like to go over on maybe areas where you're a bit behind on the reading or just need some additional support, I recommend looking through these and thinking about where in your notes you really want to focus. So the first week was when we really started to look at interpersonal communication. And I'm going to be highlighting some of the big things that you should know from that week. It's not exhaustive, but it does cover the key ideas here. One of the big things we talked about at the very beginning of the term was the 6-part communication model, right? So when we think about communication, interpersonal interactions, we've got our sender, our receiver, our feedback, our noise, our channel, right? And we have all of those elements that come together. There's other factors such as environment that shape the way that we understand messages too. So when you're thinking about this, think about how we're transmitting messages through communication. We also, during the first week, talked about the idea of perception, right? How we attend to, organize, and interpret information. We use the perception process to make sense of communication. And then we went over a couple theories and ideas from the class, one of them being Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have our basic fundamental needs at the very bottom, and then we have self-actualization at the top. We have a lot of safety needs, then we start to get into belonging needs. All of those things are ways that we choose to communicate. And then uncertainty reduction theories, the way that we reduce our cognitive and behavioral uncertainty to communicate in order to better understand and feel safer around other people. So those are some of the major ideas we went over during week 1. Week 2 was our focus on intrapersonal communication, right? So communication with yourself. We went over as well some elements of personality and identity that can be connected. So we talked about the idea of personality being shaped by culture and shaped by our experience, and temperament being more biological. For instance, a dog's temperament is used to describe if it's an aggressive or more playful dog, right? We talked about some of the measurements of self. So this idea, you can think about those circles, things like ideal self and self-concept, and the ways in which these 3 elements overlapping are important in order for us to achieve self-actualization. We have to see who we want to be to recognize who we are, and if we have overlap between those things, if we're part of the way toward who we'd like to be, we feel significantly better about our lives. And then we also talked about communication, socio-communicative dispositions, as well as some of the different attachment styles, such as secure and fearful. So some of those things are good to know on the intrapersonal communication week. So during week 3, I think this probably had the most content overall. We spent some time looking at both verbal and nonverbal communication. So if you're thinking about verbal communication, you're thinking about the ways that we use language, right? Spoken and written, and also how there are different rules of language, such as semantic, syntactic, and pragmatic rules. There's also categories of language, such as denotative and connotative. Denotative being dictionary definition, connotative being the cultural significance or context that we give. And then I think it's a good idea to refresh on both the categories and functions of nonverbal communication. Categories being things such as vocalics, haptics, proxemics. They are methods of doing nonverbal communication, whereas functions of nonverbal communication are ways in which we choose to use nonverbal, such as complementing, substituting, accenting, etc. And then last week was our focus on culture, right? So we talked about the idea that culture can be defined in terms of its norms, its rules, its values, and its beliefs. And these different elements shape what it means to be a member of a different culture. So being able to define and explain culture is a good idea going into the exam. We also talked about this idea of collective self-esteem, that we evaluate our value compared to a group in terms of whether or not we view ourselves as a good person in the group, if we value that group highly, and so on. We also talked about Stella Ting Toomey's space negotiation theory, how we manage our reputations in cultures. And then we talked about 6 spectrums of culture too, such as individualism versus collectivism, indulgence versus restraint, and so on. So it's a good idea to refresh on some of those if that's an area that you want to understand a little bit better from last week. What I want to do next is go over the practice midterm questions that are available on Canvas. You are welcome to take these as many times as you'd like. They are going to stay open for you. Let's talk about these together. So interpersonal communication only refers to an internal dialogue and does not include talking to yourself out loud. How many people say true? How many people say false? Correct. So intrapersonal communication is a range, right? On the one end, you have the internal dialogue with yourself, right? The little Jiminy Cricket in your head, the conscience that's telling you what you should or shouldn't do. And on the other end, right, you might be loudly talking to yourself. You might be in the car listening to the new Taylor Swift album and saying, yeah, I really am an anti-hero, right? So that spectrum fits within interpersonal communication. Jim says that I need a fork. The dictionary definition of the word fork helps you to recognize it's a piece of silverware. How many people think this is a semantic role, syntactic, pragmatic, or contextual? Okay, so we've got a bit of variation going on here, right? So we'll go back to this one, but continue to think about these different rules of language. Tim tells Janet that she got a leading role in the school play. As Tim shares the news, Janet starts smiling and nodding. Communication model, what would be smiling and nodding? Would this be environment, receiver, noise, or feedback? Yes, so feedback, right, is the way that we're getting a response to a message as we're sending it. So Tim is telling Janet about the story, right? He's the sender, she's the receiver, and Janet is using nonverbal feedback, nodding, and expressing interest that could inform and shape the way that Tim is choosing to communicate. So then we have question number 4 here. Which theory would critique the use of gendered language, such as the term fireman? How many people say muted group? Maslow's hierarchy, social penetration, or uncertainty reduction? Yes. So muted group theory would be the best answer here, right? Muted group theory suggests that there is a dominant group in society that has been able to define language. And we know that historically, a lot of language that is occupied by a number of people might have a history or context of being used in the masculine way, such as a fireman or a chairman. We've seen increased use of gender-neutral language to describe these terms, such as firefighter. So that's that question. And then question number 5, right? Ken grew up in the United States. He believes that his own culture is better than that of other cultures. What is Ken doing? How many people say transactional, ethnocentrism, culture, muted group? Yes, so the best answer here is ethnocentrism, right? Because ethnocentrism is somebody's belief that their own culture is better or superior than other cultures. So I wanted to just make sure that I have the full written definition of the rules of language here, right? So semantic is the dictionary definition. So semantic using the dictionary definition would be the best answer to this question. Syntactic is how we use syntax or grammar and punctuation to structure the sentence. And then pragmatic is thinking about the situation. So the key word here is the dictionary definitions being used. That would make it semantic. So there are these 2 practice short essay questions. Again, if you want to send them to me for feedback before the exam, you're welcome to still work through those. And again, each of these questions has those 3 parts. So one of these questions is about how we use different theories that we've talked about in the course. There's a lot of different options here. For example, you might choose unit group theory. Maybe you're choosing Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Maybe you're choosing face negotiation theory. Maybe you're choosing uncertainty reduction theory. So there's a number of options there. Some similarities and differences. We were to use uncertainty reduction and face negotiation. Both are about how we manage our reputations and impressions with other people, but one is more concerned with getting information. The other is more concerned about regulating ourselves in culture. Jane and Aaron are good friends, talking about where they go to college. Under face negotiation theory, you might try to manage your reputation by showing that you're confident and good at the college thing. But under uncertainty reduction, you might focus on learning more about Aaron and trying to find out what she's up to. Culture, right? Culture, we can think about those 4 different parts. So thinking about rules, norms, values, and beliefs. Whenever possible, right, in some of these answers, it's always a good idea to incorporate other examples or terms that you know. Collective self-esteem matters, thinking about how our membership in a group and our evaluation of that group is important because of how we think about the group is important or not to us and whether or not we see ourselves as included. And we have a lot of different examples of spectrums of culture, individualism versus collectivism, indulgence versus restraint, and so on. So you have a lot of options there. And again, you're welcome to look back through these short essay questions. In fact, there's a very good chance that one of those 2 short essay questions is on the exam. So you can definitely refer back to that as needed. What I want to do now is pull up the study guide for you. And before we get into our game for today, I just wanted to see if there are particular terms that you would either like to see a definition of or see an example of. So starting here on the left-hand column, right, we start with interpersonal communication, so theories, communication model, perception. And at any point, feel free to raise your hand or share if you've got questions. We then move on to intrapersonal communication. So this gets at the elements of self-image, self-worth, ideal self, self-concept, looking glass self, kindness, right? Some of these ideas. Locus of control, personality, temperament, dispositions. So these elements here are connected to that week 2. Then we start to get into week number 3, which looks at verbal and nonverbal language, the rules of language, abstraction, the usage of meaning, types of language. Can we go through that a little bit? Which part?
Some on the function of language, context, denotative. Sorry.
Yes. Okay. Yes. So denotative versus connotative meaning. So denotative is the use of a dictionary definition, right? So that is what this actually directly means. Connotative would be the context of that word, right? So somebody using a phrase that doesn't necessarily meet the dictionary definition, but is what we associate with that word, right? A good example would be the word thick, right? Using that to describe, like, you know, something that might have a lot of depth, but also it being used oftentimes to describe somebody's body, right? That would be a difference between denotative and connotative. When it comes to functions of language, right? The two major ones to know about are instrumental. So an instrumental function is using communication to achieve a basic task. I need to go to the bathroom. Versus regulatory or relational function. Hey, let's chat, let's get coffee, right? It's using it to manage your relationships. You can also use it for intrapersonal functions, like clearing your throat. So those would be the different functions to know. Under nonverbal, right, we have the functions and categories. So being able to identify some of those is a good idea. And then lastly, understanding some of these different parts of culture, including collective self-esteem, spectrums of culture, and cultural intelligence are worth looking into as well. And again, I'd recommend just kind of refreshing through the readings if you haven't done so already, just to help you on catching up. Okay. Any other questions on any of these terms before we get rolling? Okay. So what I would like you to do is to think of a nickname that you want to give yourself. So we have 5 people. So let's start here on the side. What name would you like to use?
Blacksmith.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, you can just use your name if you'd prefer. Cool. Nice. One. And then over here. Got quite a combo here. All right, so see, random number between 1 and 5. Let's generate it. 2. Okay. So Brock, you will go first. So this is a review Jeopardy game that I decided to create to help us to prepare. If you're not familiar with Jeopardy, right, the idea is that you'll basically be given an answer and you have to figure out what the question or term or idea is that's being referenced here, right? So for instance, this is a dish made up of eggs and is a lovely breakfast item. You might say, what is an omelet, right? Or an omelet would be the question. So what we will do is have somebody who will pick a category and a number, right? The higher numbers are the more challenging ones. And then once somebody selects, the response will be given. When you know the answer, raise your hand and I'll go in the order that people have their answer ready. And then if you get it right, you get to choose the next category and level of that category. So Brock, you get to go first. We have communication theories, verbal communication, nonverbal communication, culture, and intrapersonal communication. What would you like to do?
I'll go verbal communication.
Okay, so anybody who has the answer to this one is welcome to jump in. This term is the dictionary definition of the word. Yes, Blizzard Wizard. Close. So keyword here is meaning. Yes, so Blacksmith got this right? So the key distinction here is the meaning of the word, right? So the dictionary meaning would be the denotative. All right, so Blacksmith, you get to pick.
Nonverbal 300.
Nonverbal for 300. The use of physical distancing is an example of this kind of nonverbal communication. All right, you can redeem yourself. Yeah, proxemics, yes. So proxemics is the use of proximity, right? So your proximity to someone else is how close you are to that person. So if somebody's talking right up in your face, versus talking at a really long distance. That would be the use of proxemics. You can pick for us our next category. Intrapersonal for 100. This involves communicating with yourself, which can range between internal dialogue to actively talking to yourself. Blacksmith.
And I'm trying to make sure I say it right. Interpersonal communication or intrapersonal?
Intra. So
Intra.
close enough. So ER, inter, think about interrelated, right? Or interaction. Intra, right, is with yourself. Okay, you can pick blacksmith.
Culture for 200.
Culture for 200. A culture that generally is focused on the well-being of the group. Yeah.
Community, or it has community in it, but I can't remember.
Wizard. Okay, so that would be closer here, right? Collectivist culture.
Lack of okay.
Yeah. So again, one of those 6 spectrums on the one end is individualistic, the other end is collectivist. So yes, you can pick. Nonverbal for 500, rolling high. This function involves managing the communication encounter, such as gesturing for someone to sit down. Okay. Okay. It is regulating.
Oh, really?
So regulating, right, would be tapping like your watch on your wrist and saying, hey, gotta go, right? You regulate communication. Maybe you're flagging somebody down to say hello. So yeah, that's correct. Can pick again. Nonverbal for 100. This function involves using nonverbal communication instead of verbal communication. Yes, Landon. Substituting, correct. Right, so substituting is filling in the place. You can think about giving somebody a thumbs up instead of directly communicating. You can pick. Nonverbal for 200. The peace sign is an example of this term. Yes.
Nonverbal.
Close, but not quite. So I'm looking for a specific term that's used for a sign or symbol that fills in for language, has meaning with it. Yes.
Signifier?
Not quite. Begins with an E. Yes. Yes, an emblem, right? So an emblem is when you have some type of visual or gesture that, due to cultural meaning, is standing in for and representing something. Okay, pick again. Verbal for 200. The idea that our communication can be more ambiguous or direct can be described through this ladder. Yes. Correct. Abstraction ladder, right? So at the top of abstraction, you might have a class, right? It's very general. At the bottom, interpersonal communication, it's a lot more specific. So that would be abstraction. You can pick again. Verbal for 300. The use of spoken and written word can be described with this term.
What is communications?
Close, get a little more specific.
Verbal communication?
Getting warmer. Begins with an L.
Language?
Yep. Right, language is about how we use spoken and written word in our communication. So We develop a language through the use of words. You can pick the next one.
Communication theory 300.
Theory for 300. Under muted group theory, this group has control over language. Yes, each dog got it, right? You have a dominant group that has the ability to establish and create the language that other group members have to follow. You can pick.
Communication theory.
Theories for 100. This theory concerns the ways that we manage our reputation and cultures. Yes. Okay, close. Close.
Communication based theory.
So we had a number of folks with some responses who were kind of close to the mark. So I'm gonna call that one a draw. But face negotiation theory, right, is the best answer to this question. It's how we negotiate or manage our face with you. All right. Given the stalemate, Brock, you can pick.
Culture 100.
Culture for 100. The idea that one's own culture is better than the cultures of other people is ethnocentrism. You can pick again. All right. How we use grammar, spelling, and punctuation can be described with this rule. All right, go for it. Syntactic. Okay. Go for it. Verbal for 400. Specialized and technical languages, also known as this.
Jargon.
Correct.
I had it in there.
Yeah. So so like if you're in a job that has a lot of really obnoxiously technical and specific language, that would be jargon.
Scientists, mathematicians, chemists.
Yep, exactly. You find people that are into tech or like, know like scripting and code, and they will very much be in that world. You can pick.
Culture for 400.
Culture for 400. The unwritten guidelines that members of a culture have can be described with this concept.
What is norm?
Yes. Norms. So norms are the we don't do that here things, right? It's the unwritten guidelines. You pick again.
Interpersonal communications 200.
Interpersonal.
Or intra.
Intra for 200. This refers to the version of yourself that you'd like to be. Yes. Ideal self. Pretty close between these two. So you can pick. Was your wizard? Interpersonal for 300. This is biologically determined and its features are evident from early childhood.
Temperament.
What is temperament? So got it. You can pick. It's pretty close.
Culture for 300.
Culture for 300. The idea that we manage our public image of ourselves in culture can be best described by this idea. So we talked about face negotiation theory, but how do we?
Face one.
Okay, so we had a number of folks at once here. So this is face work. That's okay. All right, so we've got a few more. Theories for 5. Uncertainty reduction theory suggests that we try to reduce these 2 types of uncertainty. Raise your hand when you've got it. Yes. Yes, cognitive and behavioral uncertainty. Cognitive being cogs in your head, right? What you're thinking about, what you know about the person. Behavioral, what are they going to do, right? Stranger danger. 2 more. nonverbal for 400. This accounts for up to 93% of our communication face-to-face. Yes. What is nonverbal communication? Could be verbal or nonverbal. All right. Culture for 500. A specific and small locality can be best described with this term.
Microcultural.
Yes, a microculture. So if we think about it like circles, right? A big circle is the culture, for example, football culture, right? A smaller circle is a co-culture. Maybe it is football in the United States, and an even smaller one is a microculture, the EOU football team that I'm sure appreciated your presence with public. Okay.
Communication theory 200.
Theories for 200. This theory suggests we have basic survival needs at the bottom, self-actualization at the top. Heard it from Maslow. Okay, two more. This refers to a perception of control over one's life experiences.
Locus of control.
Yep, a locus of control. Somebody has an internal locus of control, right? They believe to be in control of their own destiny and experiences. An external locus of control says that somebody does not have much control over their life. You can pick Blacksmith.
Theory 400.
Theories for 400. This concept suggests we use an imaginary performance to think of how we present ourselves to other people. Yes, each dog.
Looking glass.
Looking glass self, right? It's imagining who we are and how we appear to other people. Okay, and we've got this last one, intra for 500. This is possible when self-image, self-worth, and ideal self overlap. Yes.
Self-actualization.
Correct. Self-actualization. So we had an extremely close, a neck and neck race between Blacksmith and Blizzard Wizard for first. Very close, but Blizzard Wizard got first with 3,200. Blacksmith came in very, very close to 3,000, and each dog came in third, sniping in with a couple good answers at 700. So I thought it'd be fun to do just a little Jeopardy game. And what I'll do after class is I will link this so that you can look back on this on your own and use it if you'd like some additional help with study. Okay. So any other terms or ideas or questions that you'd like me to go over? How are folks feeling about the exam this week? Pretty good?
Need to study.
Yeah, need to study, but feeling good. You know, again, not asking you to memorize. I think if you come in with like using that cheat sheet, having your own definition of these terms, kind of reviewing anything that you missed, I think you're in really good shape. Yeah.
Oh, just one thing. Can we go over the categories of nonverbal communication?
Yeah. Categories of nonverbal, right? So haptics is the use of touch, like tapping somebody on the shoulder. We use touch to regulate communication. Vocalics involves the use of tone of voice and sound, right? So what we say is verbal, but how we say it, like the way that our voice sounds and our use of things like pitch and emphasis of words would be considered nonverbal. Kinesics is the use of things such as gesturing and movement. So if I point at you, that would be the use of kinesics. Proxemics, right, would involve the use of proximity and physical distance. And then artifacts would involve the usage of how we engage with objects and items. So if you hold up your phone, right, you would be doing that. Chronemics would involve the use of things such as time, right, and how we regulate time in our communication. And then olfactics involve the use of things that smell. Any other questions? between now and the end of the day tomorrow, if you do have any questions or you want to send along short essay responses for me to look over, you're welcome to do that. Best of luck on the exam. It will open up on Canvas on Wednesday and then close at the end of the day on Friday. I hope you have a great rest of your week with the weird, fun weather that we've been having. And I will see you on Halloween. We are going to be meeting on Halloween, so you're welcome to be festive if you would like to be. I may or may not be in costume next Monday. We'll see.
I have a little yellow raincoat, so I'm just gonna like join you.
Oh.
Maybe bring